So thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. I saw We Live in Time actually back at London Film Festival. You had me
Oh.
a bit, sort of really connected with it and felt so deeply moved by it. But I guess for people who haven't had a chance to see it, now it's coming out on a home release very soon. Can you give us a brief intro? What can people expect going into this film?
I'd say a brief intro is it's a love story of the relationship between two people told over about 10 years or so. It sort of explores their relationships through three distinct timelines that are intercut throughout the film. So it's the kind of first year of their relationship. I mean, I'm assuming we're doing spoilers at this point, so I don't, forgive, I'm sorry. So the first year of their life, and then it's the day of the birth of their child, and then it's the kind of last year of their relationship. Yeah.
And where did you get the initial idea for it? I mean, was it this kind of non-linear structure? Was it kind of, these characters or, the idea of having to sort of battle, like illness in a relationship? What was the kind of the key starting point for you?
It was a little bit of everything mixed in together. So it was all the things at once, really. I thought, oh yeah, it'd be great to do something non-linear. But I know the truth is, again, I mean, big heavy spoiler, but I wanted to write about someone who was very ill, who was dying, but I didn't want it to be purely a tragedy, I suppose. And so I thought, well, how can you dramatize their life in a way that's more celebratory than just the kind of inevitable dying fall, as it were, of when someone is ill? And it felt like, well, actually, if you could figure out a way to kind of put the pieces together in a different order, you would have all the brilliant moments of life right up next to all the kind of awful moments of life. And so that was pretty much it. And that was like the first two paragraphs of me pitching it was roughly a version of that. And then they said, okay, just go away and write it. So, yeah.
And I wondered, that as a device, not only is it a really sort of interesting way to be able to explore kind of the nature of grief, but also
Yeah.
memory, because the truth is, when you do sort of maybe that sort of cliched thing of having flashbacks of your life, is it necessarily things that happen in order? The things that stick with you don't often are quite jumbled. So is there something that's, using that as a device helps us explore both the idea of grief, but also of memory?
Well, I think that's right. I think it certainly, possibly also one other kernel in the idea was the fear of oversharing. I mean, when I went into hospital for the birth of my daughter, this was years ago, but it was around the time I was sort of starting writing the film, I realized it was the first time I'd been in a hospital since someone in my family had died. And so you sort of realize that around the corner from the maternity ward is the ICU. And I think, yes, in the way that you're describing, of course, when you go into a hospital for something really joyous, you're inevitably possibly reminded of some less joyous stuff that you or other people might have been through. And no, I think that's right. I think, part of the interesting thing about time and memory, I suppose I feel like they're innate to film also. So it felt like it would be good to explore them in the film. But yeah, I think you're probably right, and I'm searching for a way to better articulate the thing that you've already said, which is completely true, which is, yes, I think when you're hyper aware that your time is literally running out, it's impossible not to reflect on your life. And so that was kind of implicit in the structure as well, I suppose. Yeah.
And what I also liked about the film is I felt there was something maybe even slightly old school about it, and that, it was
Oh,
quite
yeah.
straight up, romantic drama and, kind of leaning in to these everyday moments, but that are nonetheless so compelling and powerful. And it's also not shying away from sort of the messiness that can happen in a relationship. It's not so, you fall in
Yeah.
love and, there's kind of a trajectory, just in one direction, and this, like so the key moments, where they sort of have that row, and she's like, well, hang on a second, I know I wanted kids, I felt that really hit home for me, and then obviously, again, not too many spoilers, but later on when he's sort of scolding her, aren't we enough? And she's saying, I think that really cuts to the heart of what a lot of women face, my character and who I am is a multiplicity of things, not just mother, but also my kid. So is that something you really wanted to capture?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was the other thing that I suppose the structure could allow you to do, or at least you hoped it could, is that you could, particularly in the case of Alma, played by Florence Pugh, you could hold the complexity of that character at all times. Again, in a way that if it were linear, I felt like, I'm sure you could do it as well, but for some reason I was drawn to the idea of, you know, yes, I like that characters as in real life, as you say, and I am roughly the age of the characters, you know, and it is a bit of a portrait of, in a way, all the things that were happening to me and my friends and people I love at the time I was writing it, probably, is that, yeah, you can have two completely conflicting ideas. And one of those might be, oh, I definitely know I don't want children. And you may then think, oh, actually, I'm curious to explore the possibility of having children. And I don't necessarily think in life those things have to be in conflict, but in drama sometimes it can be very difficult to dramatize someone who's conflicted, or actually someone who just changes their mind. That was the one thing I took away from the film. I was like, oh, it's very difficult to dramatize someone just changing their mind in the way that I think we do in life pretty regularly and pretty in really ordinary ways. And then on the romance bit, the first bit, yeah, I mean, I'm old enough to have, like, you know, I love When Harry Met Sally, Annie Hall, those kind of things. And Annie Hall and When Harry Met Sally have a real grown-up messiness. They were films made for grown-ups, about grown-ups. Those are the kind of romantic dramas I like. I mean, I like all sorts of romantic dramas, but those, I guess, are two pretty obvious examples that stick out. Yeah.
And I sometimes feel that, you know, obviously it's a positive thing that we have a lot of sort of female-led shows and films and stuff, and, you know, definitely like discussing things around relationships and feminism. But what I like in the film is that, you know, these things can sit together at the same time. I mean, it's not that he's being misogynistic when he says, you know, like, oh, why are you, you know, powering all this energy into your career and not just your family. He's saying it out of love. And then she is saying, well, yeah, you've kind of got a point, but this is what I feel I want to do. So I feel like there's sort of real nuance and kind of authenticity in both of their reactions. And you can kind of see both their point of view. You're not sat there saying, oh, he's the one that's pressuring her to be a certain way, or she's being selfish. So was that also something great to kind of dig into?
All I can do is try and write them in the moment as honestly as I can, and generally, I would say it probably does, by and large, involve. Therefore, I'm not necessarily judgmental, and so yeah, you might write people saying mean or inappropriate things, or misjudged things, or silly things. Also, the other thing, but I don't know if it necessarily comes across, is in that particular argument, they have been to a party and they have had a few drinks. Like, it's like, again, I sort of, it's the sort of ordinary stuff of life. You're when you're stone cold sober and you're going about your day, you're able to maybe manage your anxiety or your nerves about the thing you really wish you could say to your partner. You have a few drinks, you've had a good time, you get a sort of a bit of a wind in your sails, and you think, fuck it, I'm going to tell them the thing I've been worried about for weeks. And of course, it goes terribly wrong because you're both a bit drunk. So there's also that sort of slightly messy reality bit of it, as you say, that you're picking up on too. In a couple, you have to have all sorts of relentlessly difficult, awkward conversations all the time. And those conversations are really fun to write. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you know, the writing is there, but, you know, until you've got the right actors, you know, speaking the lines, it's you don't know how it's going to turn out. And so seeing Florence and Andrew, I mean, their chemistry is so powerful on screen, and it does feel like such a lived-in relationship, which I guess is like, you know, must have been amazing for you to see. I mean, maybe you'd already guessed it was going to work out so well, or did it even take you aback seeing how incredible the performances were?
Oh no, yeah, they were amazing. Yeah, for sure. I mean, no, you never know. You obviously, you have no idea. Well, I remember we had about, I mean, I think they had about a week of rehearsal, maybe, just kind of in a room, turning through the script, nothing too full on or physical or anything. And I came in for maybe 3 days, I think. And yes, you could tell straight away that they were going to be amazing and that they really liked each other. They really respected each other. And they had quite different processes, but in a way that created a really sort of interesting energy between them. No, they were amazing. I mean, I can't say that enough. And they were incredibly prepared, incredibly ready every day to go. They knew the script inside out, back to front. It was complete joy. Yeah.
The performances do also feel quite raw, and there are sort of,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
birth scene is pretty intense.
Yeah.
The emotional, and I remember hearing Andrew Garfield as well on the red carpet at London Film Festival, and he was speaking so profoundly about
Yeah.
how he connected with the character in the script, and about exploring grief. So it's like I didn't feel like they were taking it lightly. They really were so committed to the project.
No, I think that's right. I think that's the thing that, as I say, came across in their preparation and how ready they were every day, no matter the scene. Obviously, you're shooting out of sequence and you're shooting all over the place. Like, I mean, the birth, I suppose, was the only one where they did lock everyone away in that loo for, I don't know how many days they had. I think only a couple of days. It was a closed set, so I wasn't around, which is entirely correct. But otherwise, you're completely shooting out of sequence. So they have to be ready for whatever comes at them. So they might in the morning shoot a bit from the first year of the relationship, and then at the end of the day, be shooting a bit from the final days of the relationship. Like, it was pretty wild. I mean, again, I can't say enough. It was incredibly, incredibly lucky to get them, two people that good at that point in their career, who were that sort of careful and conscientious with the material. Yeah.
And did you have a favorite moment, seeing the film get shot, or when you watch it back now, is there a favorite scene or one that perhaps was most challenging?
The one I loved watching on the shoot day was the big argument they have, as it were, in their kitchen in the sort of final timeline. And obviously it was quite small, that house. And I was crammed in a room with like the sound team. I think they shot Florence first, but I could be misremembering that. Certainly that's my memory of it, talking about memory. And so, you're just on her for the whole scene. It was just so moving. And the first take was incredibly moving, and she had all the emotion. She was, as I say, she was there. She was completely ready. And kind of everyone was just so moved. And that was quite incredible. A couple of my favorite moments in the film are like the silly stuff. Like, I like when they're throwing jelly beans into each other's mouths, and the scene in the bath where she perches a Jaffa cake on her pregnant belly. I love that image. Oh, and when Tobias eats the little sausage in her restaurant. I like that a lot. Yeah.
I feel like they're also quintessentially British moments. Like, do people in the US know what Jaffa cake is? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't know if they do. I mean, I was slightly horrified when I saw a cut, like the first time I saw a sort of cut of the film, how many just snacks and stuff I put in from my life. And I thought, oh God. So much of it is, and maybe it sounds disingenuous, but is like unconsciously just all the stuff that was swirling around in my life at the time. And Jaffa cakes was one of them, and chocolate orange, and yeah.
Well, I guess that hits to the point though as well of, like, in terms of the takeaways, like I said at the beginning, I did feel like I was in pieces, but I also felt uplifted because there was so much joy and there was so much love, and it didn't feel like, because of course, facing our mortality is something we have to face, and actually rather than looking at it with, as a taboo or something to feel very depressed about, doesn't feel like the right thing. So is that what you wanted to kind of people to come out the cinema with, that feeling of both the grief, but also the joy?
Yeah. I don't think you can avoid thinking about death, trying to stare it in the face in some way. But equally, I mean, Florence's character has that line. I think she says, "I don't want to be defined by my decline," or something. And I think, again, around the time I had been to a funeral of a friend of mine, and it was the most incredible, joyous, wonderful sort of celebration of this person. I like we were just saying, I suppose, about relationships where you have to hold many conflicting ideas. I think you can hold the idea that death is awful and life might be wonderful. And in a way, that's sort of something, again, really unique to film in terms of how you can manipulate time for the viewer, and I suppose how you can give them the experience. In life, we have to live it one way. We're forced to go one way. But on film, we can reflect on it through using a kind of different form that in reality we can't ever get to. Yeah, I definitely think it should hold a kind of plethora of all those feelings. It is incredibly sad, I mean, for sure, but also it's amazing what that character achieved on her own and with her partner. And both of those things, I think, can live in sort of simultaneity. Yeah.
And also this idea of, like, legacy versus like living life in the moment. Because I feel like, you know, even with social media, right, you can almost feel like, oh, if I didn't post it and I didn't share it with the world, did it even happen? So, you know, she's obviously conflicted in that. Like, should I be here and, you know, with my family, or should I be thinking about what I'm leaving
Yeah.
behind? And there's probably not a right answer to that. It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
So that's also something that we all have to grapple with. And maybe we're getting too obsessed with you know, we put out into the world online versus actually just living and breathing it day by day, moment by moment.
Well, I'm so old, I barely use social media. So I'm sort of, I think as I get older, I'm quite relieved about that. But yeah, I mean, I yes, have young kids. And so, yeah, I mean, every day I think, not that I'm in any way drawing a parallel between the characters. They sort of are you and they're not you. But yeah, you are relentlessly trying to balance your own ambitions with your extraordinary responsibility to your children. And there just is no right or wrong. I just, or if there is, I look forward to the day when somebody can really explain it to me and I know what to do. But for now, it's like you're sort of bungling through day by day. Yeah, I tried to capture that feeling in her, which as sort of honestly as I could, where there's a ferocious ambition, which is partly driven, I suppose, by a kind of unconscious fear to stave off death if you can, and obviously also you just want to go home and be with your family. But it's you know, it's really hard. I think you can want both. Again, you can want both at the same time, and it's not about having a judgment or one being right or wrong or better or worse than the other. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me, and
That's right.
for everyone who's not seen We Live in Time to see it. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks very much. All right. Take care.